Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice break, and just make sure that your microphones are turned back on and your videos on if you like. You know, in this section, I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction on how you might go about finding one or perhaps even more housing companions. You'll be sent some additional information on these subjects after the webinar as well, and you'll be able to kind of peruse those and help you make some decisions about some steps you might want to take moving forward. But on this slide, you know, finding companions, where do we look? I think it's important that you understand a few definitions before we get into this a little bit further. We define the host as the person who might be the homeowner or is perhaps the principal tenant of the home, and they are really the people that are responsible for managing the home, selecting the companions. And the companions, we officially use the term guests to define them. And this is an individual who's going to rent a room in the home of the host. We also have a description of what we call co-living, and this type of companion housing is, you know, a group of individuals, we spoke about this a little bit earlier, who might come together and they're going to decide on a whole new environment. They might be deciding to buy a house together or perhaps renting a larger home, and they're really doing that all together, and they decide on what kind of home they're going to choose to move into this arrangement. So, you know, as I mentioned, living arrangements can really vary in the time that you decide to do them. You know, the short term, it's usually about 6 months or less. A medium arrangement might be between about 7 and 18 months. And then the longer term is 2 to 5 years or even longer. But when you're beginning this process of looking for a housing companion, you know, it's very important to consider what you're going to feel comfortable with in the length of the term. And very often we suggest you kind of test it out a little bit and maybe do a short-term situation at first, see how you like having somebody living with you, and then you can sort of proceed perhaps to go to a longer-term arrangement. You know, like when you're trying anything new, we do tend to make mistakes, don't we? And so that's all about growth and learning. And if you're not making any mistakes in life, well, then you're maybe not trying too many things new. So I encourage you to not worry about this. You know, it's okay to make mistakes. That is how we step into something that we haven't tried before. And the first thing is, you know, really when you're inexperienced about a new situation or trying something new, a common mistake is that we treat companion housing as a rental transaction. And that's often you're focusing perhaps on the money that you might get from that. Well, we really think that in companion housing, there's some deeper considerations that we really want you to delve into, and that is what we're trying to help you understand in the webinar today. So people may accept a person at face value as well and make an assumption that, well, you know, it doesn't all look perfect, but, you know, maybe it'll all work out in time and they'll figure this out as we go along. You know, there is some planning that's really required. So as we move along a little bit in this section, you know, you're going to learn more about what your needs are and how you'd prefer to structure your companion housing arrangement. You know, what type of person you may really feel you're going to be comfortable living with. This is all very important. The second mistake is about making assumptions. And we all do this, don't we? I like a little phrase, you know, assumptions is about making an ass out of you and me, because usually, you know, very often we're wrong when we assume something about someone. And so sometimes you think, oh, well, I would never be compatible with this type of person. Or, you know, this person and I are going to be perfect together because we have a lot of interests in common. You know, people are complex, aren't they? I don't think I have to probably tell you that. But to understand a person from a quick interaction, you know, it's difficult. You have to spend a bit of time with them. You have to be observant and get to know a little bit what's under the hood, you know, just like when you're buying a car. So on the opposite side of the coin, we sometimes make assumptions that can limit a wonderful opportunity that might be there for us, you know, in finding that perfect housing companion. And I think we're all guilty sometimes of stereotyping a person. You know, perhaps because of particular traits or backgrounds. And this is when we can miss a great opportunity. So a typical example for you about an assumption of stereotyping a person is often when you think about how clean that person's going to be in the home. And I think we often think, well, a woman's going to be tidier, she's going to be more organized, she's going to straighten up after herself, and that's sort of based on gender. Well, that isn't really true. I can certainly offer, one of my sons would put me to shame as to how organized and how clean he keeps his condo. Every time I go down there, I say to my husband, oh my goodness, wow, he's really tidy, isn't he? So, that's a little assumption that we can make based on gender. And so, I just want to caution you about that. Allow a person to represent their true self, and maybe you're going to learn a little bit about yourself in the process. So a third common mistake that we often make is making a choice out of desperation. Maybe you have a need, a financial need particularly, or maybe you're afraid you're not going to be able to manage that yard, and what's going to happen, the neighbors are going to be starting to criticize you, I need to do something about this right now. Well, what I have found running my business, it's very common. Often I'm needing a new staff person and I feel a little bit desperate about it. And I get, do some interviews and I go, well, I got to hire that person. It doesn't feel quite right. And it's kind of similar to this situation. When you do things out of desperation, you're doing them out of fear. And we should never make a decision to do something out of fear or to not do something out of fear, because invariably it does not work. And I have definitely found this in my life when I make decisions out of desperation. So avoid choosing someone is not compatible because you need somebody to move in. Okay, you have to watch for that. It's hard to do it. but just remember what I said there, and it'll come back to you. So doing so, we don't want to lead you into disappointment and frustration. We want this to be a successful thing that you venture into. And so, you need to give yourself enough time. It might take 2 or 3 months, is typical as you go through this process. And especially, if you're looking at a longer situation and there might be special things that you're working out in an agreement, you don't rush it. Be patient. We all, when we decide we're going to do something, we sometimes like to jump in, and it's hard to be patient, but it really does pay off to be successful. So successful ventures usually require this sort of planning time where remember I told you about, when we make change, it's an inside out job. This is where spending some time to really explore, what it is you want, and discover, what barriers and boundaries might present themselves, what might lead you to rushing in or having some mismatches when you're interviewing people. And so we really sort of think about this as, what are your must-haves? These are things you need in order to consider living in a home with someone. For example, if you're looking to move into a larger home, to share that with somebody who owns a home or rents a larger home, it may be really important that you have a place to park your car. Depending where you're living, you may not feel safe to just have it on the street. You might need space for a bike if you're, going to school. And it's very important to think about these needs, and particularly it might be really important to you that you bring somebody into your home who really wants to share meals with you and sit down and have those conversations. So those are just a few examples. The don't wants are also really important. And sometimes those jump out in our mind before even the wants do, don't they? Well, I know I don't want a partier. And, yes, that would be what we like to term the deal breakers. The absolute things that you just couldn't tolerate that. When you get married and you think, okay, can I tolerate him living up the seat on the toilet all the time, or is that really just going to be the end of it for me? So you have to think about these things. If someone's a night owl and you're a person that likes to go to bed early, well, that might be a deal breaker for you. Somebody's a partier. If you're allergic to cats and somebody has a cat that they've had for a few years and are not going to part with, those are sort of things that we call deal breakers. So I want you to just take a few moments here, and each of you maybe just close your eyes for a minute and just think, maybe something, a must-have might jump up in your mind, or you might even have a deal breaker that comes forward more quickly. So I want you to just think about that and maybe write 1 or 2 deal breakers, absolutely things you couldn't tolerate. And also, what are must-haves? We've talked about this a little bit in part 1, but I want you to just think about it again, because this is just a crucial part of this process of moving towards selecting a housing companion. So either in the chat box, just, think about this for a minute and just put, no, I can't have somebody who stays up late at night. That just might jump out you. I want somebody who can take care of the lawn because it's just such a worry for me right now. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes, and again, if you're not comfortable writing it in the chat box, just write it down for yourself on some paper. And these are things that you can expand on after the webinar's finished and you're thinking about this a little bit more. So I'm just getting you going on it. Just going to give you a couple minutes. Just allow yourself to ponder that a bit. What is that kind of person like that I want to move in with me, or I want to move into their home? Maybe you want to have somebody come from a different culture. That's often quite exciting and a real time of growth for people. Yeah, so you can continue just jotting those down if you want as I just go on a little bit. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, just about other cultures. What does that mean? Well, Canada is a very multicultural country, isn't it? I think we're very open-minded here, and we do accept people from all different nationalities and backgrounds. And because of this, when you might be searching for that housing companion, you will likely come across somebody from a different culture that gets in touch with you, and it may be a culture you don't have a lot of experience with. So what are cultural norms? We refer to these as patterns or behaviors that are typical of a certain group. These norms are often invisible to those who grew up in the culture. This has been part of your life experience and you don't think anything about it. And Canada actually has a couple of its own cultural norms that might be different from other countries. So, a little example that might bring this more home to you is about punctuality. Canadians are on average quite literal about time and schedules. I guess we are pretty good planners, like to have a little bit of control over things. And so scheduling, to meet at 6 p.m. means, that person needs to be here right at 6 p.m. In fact, they should probably be there about 10 minutes early. And I have to confess, I'm a bit of a stickler on this myself. I always arrive early, and then if I'm waiting for somebody and it's 10 after 6, I'm already starting to think negatively about them. I'm thinking, well, gee, they haven't called me, they haven't texted me. Oh, okay, now it's 6:15. And you go back to the past and to your own cultural norm, and you're already setting up a negative situation when this person does arrive. So, in contrast, in Latin America, for example, arriving at least an hour late is just expected. You are still, it's the custom of the culture to still welcome people. It doesn't matter if they are late, you're the host, and it's considered very rude if you get upset with latecomers. So, a tool I like with this is called the cultural iceberg, which we're showing here on the slide. And this is where you sort of see the top of the ocean and everything's very visible in front there, but this iceberg effect is what's going on underneath the top of the ocean. We tend to think about this in consciousness and development as well. What things aren't quite so visible to us. And so this is very important to consider. What are these norms underneath the tip of the iceberg that maybe aren't visible and we can't see right away. So many stereotypes are made up from this, whereas where the traits we can't see are often of even greater importance as to how you are going to fit as a companion relationship in this way. So the key point to take away here, I think, is to meet people with an open mind. Don't let those little ants start going, well, this person's late, that must mean they're this. You don't assume that. I mean, maybe they had a flat tire on the way. There's all kinds of reasons why somebody might be running a bit late. So you might be pleasantly surprised, who a person actually is once you get to know them a little bit more, just by extending sort of this open willingness to understand their culture and see who they truly are. It really makes life so much richer, doesn't it? So let's just go forward. Another area that I think is really helpful to review with you is about different personality types. Someone's personality is, of course, something that you're going to be concerned about if you're thinking about moving in with them. And again, we're all complex in our makeup, and personality can often change with the situation and with the environment, can't it? And chances are you probably know somebody who's very shy in public. I have a son like this as well. But when he gets around his friends or the family, he's bubbly and talkative and very much at ease. So it's to be, again, a little open to let this person relax, see what their true personality is, and it's often different, isn't it, when we're at home or when we're at work or when we're out with friends. So, I think this will help you to better understand yourself as well, because that's important, isn't it? You're looking at an exploration of what is your personality, who is this person that's going to fit with you. And so there's really about 5 big personality traits that I'm just going to discuss with you here. And I really love this information because I think, as I say, it helps you understand yourself better. I think we all need a little help with that, don't we? So the first of these personality traits is openness. And this is a person who has, a general appreciation of new experiences. They're quite adventurous and they have unusual ideas, perhaps, think outside the box. They're quite creative. A second personality trait is conscientiousness. A highly conscientious personality indicates a preference for planning, rather than being completely spontaneous. I'm a little bit like that. I kind of like to think I'm very responsible about things, but it's nice to have somebody who's a little more spontaneous living with you. It makes you live life a little bit lighter. So it's not a good thing to have these differences. And the third trait is what we term extroversion. And these are people who often typically get more energy when they are around people, and particularly if these people are more adventurous, a little more outgoing. Somebody who is in an extroversion type of personality, they kind of move with the flow of what the energy is around them. So somebody who's more adventurous, well, suddenly they're going to be more adventurous, and this might be good for you, So again, these are the pluses that come from these different personality types coming together. The fourth consideration is around a personality type around agreeableness. And this is about how one values getting along with others. Are you willing to compromise your interests to help another person? Or do you mainly worry about yourself and what your needs are? And sometimes we just have to think about this a little bit. And it is in relationships sometimes that we can improve who we are. We become aware of maybe a habit that maybe isn't the best. And that's okay, because that's what we're all trying to learn, isn't it? How to improve our relationships and be better people. And lastly, there's the trait of neuroticism. This personality type, and I'm sure we all know somebody like this, or you may feel that you're like this yourself. You're very vulnerable to stress. It affects you very much energetically. You can then be quick to anger. And it also can cause a lot of anxiety. And in my work with people, I often find as I go deeper underneath this is usually underlying fears that a person may have. And when we push those fears down, guess what? Stress starts to build, and we tend to start projecting on people around us. And everybody else, there's something wrong with them. So sometimes it's just to explore a little bit about what you might be fearful of. And again, that is related to a sense of control. The more fear you have, the more you want to be in control. So that's something, again, to just think about for yourself. Look at that. How quickly do you fall into anger? Especially when you're in an uncomfortable situation. You could just, pause on that for a minute. So everybody, often lies somewhere in the middle along this continuum, and being higher or lower in one trait is not good or bad. These are just guidelines of how you might typically behave in a certain situation or environment. And really the key takeaway here is to be aware. Know thyself. What is your personality? And when you know yourself, then you can better communicate what you want, what you don't want, and that is going to help you be successful when you're selecting a housing companion. Giving you a little personal growth here. So it is a good idea to continue, journaling about this, about your lists around this after the webinar. Get to know what this is within yourself, get it down on paper, because as I say, once you bring it out, put it on paper, express it to other people, this increases your own awareness, and you're going to be clearer about the next step to take to form a successful relationship. And we want to be helping you with all this, and you can certainly go to the Happipad website, happipad.com, and there is a free personality assessment there that you can take. And this is also part of a whole free online course that's available on Happipad if you want to have a look at that. And the link is available in the workshop notes that we're giving out to you. And so, we are here to help you with all of this. So again, where are you going to look for these potential companions? Now that we've given you a bit to think about some of the considerations that you want to look at, how are you going to approach this? You have to determine, again, are you going to be the host, or are you going to be the guest, as I defined for you earlier? Or you may be considering this co-living arrangement where you're going to move into a whole new living situation. Those were the three terms that I was explaining to you. And I just want to review a few of the ideas, just touch on them briefly. There's classified sites, of course, such as Kijiji. You're probably quite familiar with that. It's a very large network that you can access into, but I just want you to be cautious with that, because there's no security screening or protection when you're going to some of these classified sites. Another idea is bulletin boards. I find with COVID they're not quite as abundant as they used to be, but often if you are going to a church, that's a good place where there's often a bulletin board, and you might have a greater sense of trust for something like that, or you might belong to a group. Those are good places to perhaps advertise something on a bulletin board where you feel a little bit more comfortable. But sometimes you're not getting quite the exposure, of course, to the number of people to help you find that right person. So social media groups, not everybody is on social media, but of course we know Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, I'm trying to get familiar with more of these, but you know, for the younger people watching this, of course, this is you're very comfortable with this, and it is a good way that you often find people that are like-minded with you. You know, there's different groups that you can join. You can find people that have similar intentions as you that might align really closely and be a good fit for you. We're also starting to see a lot of community programs surfacing across Canada on companion housing, and these can be a really great resource for you, especially, you know, ones that provide a little bit of extra support. So again, this is on the Happipad partner program at happipad.com. You can find some of these other community programs. Happipad, of course, has a lot of support information for you, and there are a lot of other sites. Toronto Home Share is one that combines an efficiency of classified websites, you know, being available for you. So again, there's a lot of support out there now, and we encourage you to make use of some of these sites to make this easier for you. It's good to not let yourself become really overwhelmed. You know, that's what the webinar is about, just taking one step at a time, moving forward and reaching out for support. So if you're making up an ad and you want to spend some time writing that, you want to put some thought into it, because that's going to be who you attract. You know, it's kind of like the singles ads, I guess. You know, you need to think about this, and you need to present something that is a good description that sort of creates a picture. You know, avoid just saying, you know, room for rent, and you're just giving facts, because that doesn't generate a warm feeling for that person. So, you know, here's a little bit of an example for you of an ad that I think would maybe attract some people to you. You know, it says, looking for a like-minded, active vegetarian to share my country home. If you like helping with yard work, listening to the birds chirping in the morning, and the sight of horses out in the pasture, well, this home may be what you're looking for. Well, you know, wow. You know, right away it sort of creates a picture, doesn't it? And if that's something that fits for you, you're probably going to go, okay, well, boy, I'm going to get a hold of this person. So do you understand that? It's like create a picture with the ad. You know, try to think of that as you're writing out the words. And the idea here is that the reader can visualize this in their mind, and it generates this sort of feeling of yes. You know, they're going to go ahead and take that action step. So price is an important subject, you know, as well, that can make a difference in who you will attract, of course. You know, offering a lower price is going to likely attract more interest generally, and especially if you're attracting a younger person or perhaps somebody who is going to school. Of course, that's going to make a difference what you're pricing your rent at. But we'd like to give you a little tip here that it's important to just include the utilities cost in the monthly rent that you decide you're going to charge if you're the host. And you can have a look at your you know, utilities bills over the past 12 months or so. Take an average and then just include that in your rental costs. You know, if you're wanting to have somebody, for example, do some extra work around your home, then, you know, maybe help you a little bit with something else around the home that you're needing, then you may do an exchange with them, and you might reduce the rent or work out a certain agreement. And this would come into when you're writing out an agreement between you and your house companion, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more in part 3. So it's really important to avoid confusion and have undefined expectations, because of course that just leads into trouble, doesn't it? Everybody starts making assumptions, and then things aren't working. So I want you to just have a look here. This is the Happipad portal that's on the happipad.com website, and you know, they're offering a lot of support to you. So this example here is just pictured of a home listing platform that's available there, and it allows you to list different things, what your house rules might be. You can include what you're going to provide here if you're the host. It allows you to, you know, receive applications from people people without sharing your email or other personal information. And I think it gives you a sense of safety. If you're unsure about putting yourself out there, especially in social media, this is a little bit more trusting way to go about it. If you're a guest or you're looking for a co-living arrangement, then again, on this portal, you can create a post that says, wanted ad, or you may, you can do this, you're in search of a certain thing, and then you're using those nice terms again, so you attract the host that may be perfect for you. So once you've created a post or an ad, of what you're looking for or what you're offering, you should start to see some emails and phone calls coming in, and that's kind of exciting. And so then you're going to start reviewing the applications. Not everyone who inquires is going to be suitable for you, and that's okay, but just try to be courteous and respectful and respond to each of the people that you receive. And that's just nobody likes to be hanging out there waiting to see whether they might be someone of interest. So if you're using a classified website, you can also ask them to send a resume, which is going to be helpful for you to just review who they are. If you're using the Happipad platform, then you're going to be able to immediately see that person's profile, what their personality traits are, and many other details. So again, it's just going to simplify the process for you and make that initial assessing, quite a bit easier. So, when you're looking at them, ask yourself, is this person meeting sort of this basic criteria that you've all laid down on paper, your wants, your don't wants, what are your deal breakers. And if you think that there's potential with this particular applicant, you can also do an internet search of their name. It might not be that there's many names there, but it just takes a couple of minutes to do a Google search. So why not do it? You might find out some interesting things. People do put a lot on Facebook, I have to say. So if you're still interested, then this is when you might move forward. Remember, I said everything happens step by step, and you might move to that step to actually schedule an interview with them. So I'm just going to review a couple of things for you about that, just to give you a little bit of an idea. And that's all we're trying to do here today, is just give you this sort of umbrella idea, so that these things aren't going to be too fearful for you. This is a process, and we're just going to take you through each step. So when you're interviewing, whether you're the host or if you're a guest or forming a co-living arrangement, these are a few of the tips. The initial interview can be by phone, or if you're used to Zoom, which many of us are now, that you get a sense of who they are by seeing their face. Or you might, now things are opening up, you might be able to do that in person. So whatever is most convenient for you. But when you're meeting somebody new, the first step is always to develop a little bit of rapport. You don't want to dive in and start scrutinizing and asking all the tough questions. Make the conversation light and just get to know them a little bit, so they sort of feel relaxed, and it helps you relax as well. And some people are shy and kind of reserved at first, so just be patient and sort of allow that true personality to come forward. But some key topics, I'm just going to quickly touch on a few of them. There's also an interview guide on the Happipad website, which is really helpful when you get to this stage, but we'll just touch on a couple. Be honest with them. Let them know a bit about what you have discovered that are really important wants and needs that you have defined. That's okay to share them. It might be helpful that right off the bat you discover, yes, there is a deal breaker here. They absolutely have to bring that cat, and you're allergic to cats. So, then you can sort of gently bring the interview to an end if that's just a deal breaker that you can't go any further with. Discuss how you're each going to use the home, and perhaps you both plan to work from home, and that might create a conflict, something like that. How clean and organized are you and that person? That can often, if there's really exact opposites, that sometimes can be an issue. Noise, again, is a sort of conflict area. What's acceptable noise to them and to you. If they're up at 6 in the morning with the blender making their smoothies, or they're watching their action show on TV at 11 o'clock at night. Are they a big guy and they've got very heavy footsteps and they tend to come in later? Okay, well, these are some of the scenarios that might come forward in that sort of initial conversation and help you in your decision-making process. So, visitors as well, are they going to have a lot of visitors? Do they have people coming from out of town? Do they have a significant other that might be coming over and staying overnight? How do you feel about that? That's a good thing to explore, pretty early in this interviewing process, because you need to know yourself and what you're willing and open to embrace and what you actually go, nope, it's not going to happen. And so, it's just about having an honest dialogue. How are you going to share food? Do you want things to be all separated and maybe you want them labeled and stacked up neatly, and maybe they're very loosey-goosey about this, and so you think, can we work this through? Let's talk about it a bit. And your personal values, there's important sort of in that initial meeting to sort of sense, are you somebody that has similar values? If you're a totally giving person and they seem to appear to be rather selfish as you're having a discussion, you might think, well, are we going to get along? Are we going to be able to talk things through, or it's better to know it right now? How about sharing chores? That's another important aspect. Do you feel they're going to sort of work as a team with you? And so, sometimes it's good to really think this ahead before the interview, write some questions down, or look at that interview sheet that Happipad has on the website, and just think about what's important before you bring them in to have that interview. So again, just go to happipad.com if you want a free interview guide. It's a great resource for you, and just have a look at that and study it a bit. Write some notes before you actually connect with that person. When you're moving forward to the next step, it's you think, yes, I kind of like this person. I think I might want to pursue this. You might want to step into doing background checks, getting references, maybe talking to a couple of those people that they may have lived with before, even a work reference. And I think this is important as you're moving through those steps to make yourself feel comfortable, and so that's an important aspect if you feel that is necessary for your comfortability. So it's not sort of standard practice to do a credit check or anything like that if you're just renting a room to someone. But if you were going into a co-living situation and there may be some investment of money, well, that would be where you may want to do a credit check and find out what their credit score is. And of course, that requires their approval. And so again, that's where you may want a little bit of support, and Happipad certainly provides that for you if you're needing to take that step. So you know what? Well, I think you're probably ready for another bit of a break, aren't you? So we're going to take 15 minutes and give you time to maybe grab a quick snack. Just don't forget to mute yourselves before you go and take yourself off the video, and then we'll come back. We're going to go into part 3, which is about steps for success. So come back just before 15 minutes and I'll see you shortly.